and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. Okay, so as I've mentioned in the last few episodes, I had my first LARP like 2 weeks ago. Well, in the last episode I said it was upcoming because I filmed it beforehand, but you understand what I'm saying. I went to my first LARP. First of all, it was incredible, such a great time. But I'm gonna be getting into that a little bit more with a special guest pretty soon. For this episode though, I wanted to talk about a very specific piece of kit. Namely, footwear. I had such a hard time finding good footwear to bring to a LARP. Namely because it ran the gambit from either really cheap, just kind of costume footwear to super expensive, really nice pieces. And I don't know what kind of money you think YouTube gives you. It's not really expensive boots for fun's kind of money. But damn it, if it can be made, we will make it on this show. So that's today's episode. Today I'm going to show you how to take any old boots you might have. In fact, I'm going to be using these boots here and turn them into knee-high fantasy boots. Now just as a heads up, I'm going to be using leather for this project because the shoes are leather and it'll match really nicely. But you can use whatever material kind of tickles your fancy to make this thing happen. Whatever you're most comfortable with and will stand up to the whole shape and all that. Alright, so with my whole little preamble done there, let's just get right to it and level up this skill. Now, as I made mention for this project, I'm using these old Timberland boots that I have here. These things are made out of a really nice leather and have served me really well. But for this project, you can totally use shoes or whatever you have. So to start this project, we first have to make a pattern. So to do that, I'm using my old tried and true method of just using some plastic wrap to wrap it around my leg and the boot about as high as I want the finished product to go. Then I add some masking tape just to stiffen it up a little bit more. With all that done, I cut straight down the middle of my calf to free up my leg. This gives me this nice little pattern to work with. Now in my head, I'm picturing that kind of tall section of the boot there to either open from the middle like a regular boot does here, or flap around and open from the side instead. Regardless though, it's not going to be opening from the back like how I have it cut right now. The only reason I'm cutting it from the back is in order to get this kind of shape where it's going to come around my heel and then even more so because it has to go around my calf. That's going to be odd to cut out of a single piece of leather and you can't really have it be straight. It needs to kind of conform to that shape. So by cutting it down the middle and then using that as a pattern, when I put that leather back together, it should conform to that shape correctly. Regardless though, I also cut my pattern from the front just to give me the panels I need to work with. So to connect this entire assembly to the boot, I think I've come up with kind of a cool approach. Basically, I'm going to use all these lace holes here to actually connect everything together. So to facilitate that, I went ahead and cut this piece to match this panel where the laces go. I'm hoping by doing this, it's going to elevate it from just kind of looking like spats to actually looking like an integrated part of the boot. If you want to see spats made, by the way, check out this episode right here. It didn't film correctly, but I actually ended up taking those patterns and transferring them over to a thin foam, just because that tends to behave a little bit more like the leather that I'm going to be using. And once I taped them all together how I want it to sit, I was able to test it out on the boot to make sure everything lines up. And already, I think you can see where I'm going with this, and I'm really excited to see if it's going to work and just kind of connect together. So with that looking correct, I just went ahead and transferred everything over to some 6-ounce veg tan leather, and then cut out my pieces. This is going to give me 2 of these panels per shoe, and also 2 of these lace areas per shoe. Finally, I also cut an inch-wide strip of leather to help me connect the backs together. Again, I want this to either open up in the front or on the side, which means I need to actually stitch that back together. But I want to do this nice and flat so I don't have a seam that's going to be rubbing up against my heel or my calf the entire time. To do this, I just made a mark with my compass, about a ½ inch in along that back seam on both sides. This makes it so I'm able to see where I can place my contact cement. I also added some contact cement to that inch-wide strip of leather. Once the cement is tacky, I can now secure half of that strip on one panel, and then carefully place the second panel down exactly where I need it to go so it lines up nice and clean. And as you can see, this does a really good job of duplicating the shape of the back of my leg, giving me this nice arch where my ankle goes and enough room for my calf and heel. That said, that area is going to get so much stress, I don't want to rely on contact cement alone. But with the contact cement holding everything in place, it's much easier to go back in with my sewing machine and really lock everything in with some thread. This gives me a super solid connection that I can trust not to just randomly open up when I'm running around, killing orcs and whatnot on the battlefield. And I am super happy right now with how this fits around my boot. And knowing that fits, I'm able to place those little lace panels where they go, and line them up with the ones that are already existent on my Tims. This way I can mark where all those lace holes need to go, and those I simply just used a hole punch to make my openings. I also took this opportunity to do all the leather things like beveling their edges and slicking them down. Then I just went ahead and added some grommets to those holes. This will help protect the leather around them and make sure the connection to my shoe is really secure. And with those grommets in place, I used a lace to attach those panels to the boots so I knew exactly where they fell. This made it really easy to line everything up together and use an awl so that I can mark exactly where they sit in relation to each other. I also marked the insides as well, just to make sure everything lines up. So those are the basics of like the body of the boot, right? But before I went much further and started putting things together, I wanted to get that color down. This part can actually be really tricky, trying to match like an older leather. Like these guys here, they came out of factory, this color. I don't necessarily have this dye. Not only that, but they've also had years, like I think I've had these for like 6 years. Years of use that's gonna discolor them, make them their own very unique color. But the gods of LARP shine upon me this day, because this guy, Phoebing's Light Brown, just so happens to match this perfectly. Like, look at this piece of dyed leather. It's really close. And obviously, if you're either not using leather or you're doing different color combinations anyways, the point is moot. But yeah, I was really excited to find a color that actually matched these boots. So with that knowledge securely in hand, I just went ahead and dyed all of my panels as evenly as possible. And check out how good this color match is! Sure, the leather's a lot newer looking and it's gonna need to be weathered a little bit, but in general, that's a really close color match. Alright, so with that little feather in my cap, it's okay to start putting everything together. To do this, I just used my wing dividers again, and made some marks just shy of where those grommets fell. In order to be able to lace everything up, I need to actually be able to get to those grommets, so I need that whole little strip that they sit on to be free and able to move around so I can position the laces through them. Using that same setting on my compass, I also marked the area on the main body where those lace panels are gonna sit. This way I have a clear guide on where to put my contact adhesive. And once it's tacky, I simply locked them into place using the marks I made as a guide. And that brings us to this moment of truth where we can see if this diabolical scheme works. Using some laces, I was able to go through the holes that were already in the shoe and through the ones that I made my little leather addition to secure everything together. And check out how dope that looks! Not only is the connection super secure, but having the new leather continue down to where the laces are really helps smooth out the transition there and pull the whole thing together to look like one piece. I'm a little one of these with that thing. I love how that worked out. Though from here, I'll admit I was a little bit stuck. I realized that if I wanted it to open from kind of the front there, I had cut it a little too flush, so if I wore anything bulky or whatever, the odds are there'd be a little space in the middle. That'd be no problem if I had kind of like a tongue that continued up like a regular boot might have. But that was a whole other process of trying to figure out how to connect the tongue so it looked right and all that jazz. So in the end, I decided to go with this kind of flap design that I made out of paper here. Though that does add a little bit more bulk, it's going to give me a lot of leeway where if I want to wear something bulky, that'll just kind of slide off to the side but still cover the opening. Or I could just tighten it all the way around and everything still looks smooth. So with my paper template already made because I was testing it out, I just transferred it over to some leather and dyed them using the same color scheme. And attaching these were super easy. All I had to do was mark where they would land on the inside of the boot so that I can lay down roughly a ½ inch worth of contact adhesive and stick the two pieces together. To keep them even more steady, I added some rivets to the corners and then combined everything together with some more thread. My sewing machine was able to make really short work of all of this as well as the other panels on here, but it really isn't necessary. You can hand stitch this whole thing. There's really not a lot of space there that you have to stitch up, so it'd probably take you just a couple hours to do this all by hand. Alright, so the very last thing I needed was a way to keep everything closed tightly. I also wanted to really break up the kind of monolith of leather that front portion had become, so I decided to just use these straps that I made up. I simply connected 2 of these per boot with rivets onto the open side, This way I can just wrap them all the way around my calf and tighten them up as much as needed. I also left myself a lot of extra strap, not only because I like to have the ability to wear something bulkier underneath if I want that extra space, but also I just kind of like the vibe of having all these extra straps kind of twisted about. I don't know, it feels a little bit more haphazard rangery to me. But if you're making yours, you can obviously make it as clean as you want. Now that it's all together, I was able to lace these suckers up and strap in all the belts, and oh my god, I'm over the moon with how cool these things came out. Like, look at how slick that is. These totally look like one whole boot, right? Tell me that doesn't look good. Even like the stitch lines and stuff, I'm excited about how these look. And here's the beauty, if you do this yourself, you can make it whatever. You can change the shape of the top here, you can put a little fold over so they're like pirate boots. And unlike spats that are two very separate pieces, like these hold on super strong. They're part of the same unit here. The only thing I'm not crazy about with this particular design I have here are these little bits that stick out right on the corner. But there is a reason for that. Because I could just continue this line, arch down, and just cut that, and those would just disappear. But because these boots have otherwise kind of gotten close to the end of where I'd be using them just for regular use, I was thinking about maybe making this permanent. All I would have to do is add a little bit of contact adhesive down here, and then either stitch or just add rivets, and then this boot would just be a boot. Like, it already looks like it goes together, it would just be a big old boot. I don't know, leave in the comments section what you think. Should I just make this its own little thing? I think it's really cool. I like that. I hope you do try this one out, and if you do, why don't you leave in the comment section how it came out? I'd really like to know. Hopefully this gives you a little bit easier and cheaper alternative to buying those fancy boots online. Alright, so before I go, I have a little shout out I want to make. I got a really cool email recently from somebody named Sue and their 10-year-old son, Joseph. Joseph really likes watching this channel and was even able to master the skills from my escape videos, which is really cool. So I wanted to personally thank you, Joseph, for watching me here and for actually trying out some of the stuff we do. It means the world to me that you enjoy watching the show, and I think it's really cool that you actually give this stuff a shot. And remember, if you can't get something to work the first time, it's alright. I usually can't get stuff to work the first time either. The point is that we keep trying, and eventually we do get better. I promise you, things always get better. The same goes for the rest of you if you've stuck around this long. The purpose of this show is for you to actually try some of these things and give it a go. And I don't know what I'm doing most of the time, and that's alright. If I can do one thing with this show is to get you to try something new and maybe make this world a little bit of a cooler place because of the things that you're able to put into it. So yeah, thank you to all of you who watch. It means everything to me that you do. Alright, so as always, if you do like what I do here, why don't you give me some of that thumbs up love on this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, so you know when I release new skills. Until next time though, keep leveling up, you. Behold, you've made it to the end credits. Thank you for sticking around. It's a really easy way to support us here on the channel because YouTube loves it when you stay to the end. Also, a special thank you to these amazing people, without whom this show could not exist. They pay the bills, keep the lights on, and keep me rolling in leather. If you'd like to join their noble ranks, consider becoming a Patreon by clicking the link in the description below. Otherwise, you can also support us by clicking on one of these videos over here. They're both good. Can't go wrong.